Welcome to another episode of Angels, Positivity, and Love. Incredible guests from all over the world, healers, best-selling authors, professors, doctors, you name it. We've had them on the show. We're in our second season, 50 episodes in 2023. We went to 3 shows a week in the middle of 2024. That's about 112 additional episodes for that year, and we're already booking into 2025. Again, really incredible folks who have had a unique life journey. And oftentimes, if not most of the time, they've turned around and they're helping others one way or the other. Again, best-selling authors, lecturer, TED Talk speakers, and you name it. Today from England, we've got Dr. Jude Currivan, who's cosmologist, futurist, author, healer, longtime healer, super connected. And I'm super excited to have her on Angels, Positivity, and Love. Jude, welcome to the show.
It's great to be with you, Mike. Thank you for the invitation.
Thanks for being here. And I will say it this way, for gracing us with your presence. You've been doing this a long time. You've done a lot of interviews. Can you go big picture for us first in any which way you want? How long have you been doing what you've been doing? Can you define cosmology for us and how you're a futurist?
Okay, well, I've been doing what I've been doing as far back as I can remember, in the sense that I had my first what I call supernormal experience, not supernatural, not paranormal, but supernormal experience when I was 4 years old. And that has been a lifelong constant up to today and hopefully tomorrow and onward. And so I've been walking between worlds all my life. And at the same time, I've journeyed a very scenic route of a path, because my middle name is curiosity, is why, is why, is why. So I've been following that path of discovery and exploration, investigation all my life, because what I've been really so fascinated by and so grateful for is this experience of the nature of reality, which is far greater, more multidimensional, more profound, even than our beautiful universe. And so my work has been to understand ancient wisdom, universal wisdom teachings, learn from many, many different wisdom keepers, incarnate and discarnate, to weave those universal wisdom teachings, indigenous wisdom teachings, ancient wisdom teachings, spiritually based teachings, with leading edge science. And that's really where my cosmology, and as a cosmologist, that's my hat in that sense, because most people who describe themselves as cosmologists are mostly focused on the physical world. And as a cosmologist, I'm expanding that to the nature of reality in as a cosmos. So bringing together all of these areas of interest and focus, and they are converging now into an emergent understanding of what I call unitive reality. So that's as a cosmologist. As a futurist, I'm a futurist because I'm an optimist.
Mm.
I have an optimism that the universe is inviting us to wake up, to remember that we're actually inseparable, that we actually are its microcosmic co-creators, that we can grow up to be its and our planetary homes co-evolutionary partners, and to consciously evolve. And as a planetary healer, I realize that the last steps of the journey we've been on have been a journey of perceived separation. And we're realizing now, and the ancients and the universal teachers have always realized, that separation is illusory. Reality is real, but separation is not. And I realize, therefore, that we hold a lot of trauma, both personally and collectively, without blame or shame, but from that journey of individuation, which is really important, but inclusive of that perception of separation, which now is unsustainable, it seems to me. So there's a lot of healing to do. And the more we can heal into the wholeness of who we really are, it seems to me, the more we can take that incredible revolutionary step into the future.
Very generous definitions of cosmology and futurism, or being a futurist. I love it. Very expansive. So thank you for that. Can you talk to us about the nature of man? This is just one of those eternal questions everyone's been asking forever. But we've got something called maybe the heart or consciousness awareness, where it's a little timelessness, limitlessness, and so on. And then we've got something called thinking, and we'll call it unlove or fear or whatever. But there's that, and then there's the reality we perceive as an individual, in groups, and beyond as mankind goes, what we accept through science. And then there's the broader reality. Can you cover that just a little bit more? Because it looks like the gap was, wider at one point, and now we have a chance to maybe expand. Awareness is on the horizon for man. And this could be 3 hours. I doubt it'll be 3 hours. If people would have to want to pay attention more. But what's your take on this big eternal question for mankind?
Well, let's perhaps again go back to the earliest teachings we have. And those are the teachings of, for example, ancient India, especially because we have something called the Vedas, the Upanishads, that are the writings that we still have from those times. And those writings, I believe, offer incredibly profound insights into the nature of reality. And they, at their heart, say that mind and consciousness aren't something we have, but literally what we and the whole world are. And other universal wisdom teachings speak along a sort of a range that basically, describes reality in those terms too. So in other words, that, the materiality, the material world as it appears, is not the deeper nature of reality. So if we're going to understand who we are, then the more we can understand the deeper nature of reality, the more we can find our home in that understanding. And we've had a paradigm, a worldview, as it were, based on a science of materialism and separation. And that science is actually 150 years old. It's the sort of the late 19th century science of a mechanistic universe, of a world of separation, essentially. It works well, but it's nonetheless described as in separate terms. And it was that worldview that was at its peak, and its technologies drove the Industrial Revolution. So all that has come from those times, even with the later science and all the technologies that have come from that, nonetheless informs our governance, our healthcare, our education, our economics, all the way we are organizationally and socially is back to that 19th century mechanistic perspective. And even the discoveries in the 20th century of quantum physics and relativity physics that gave us clues to the deeper understanding of reality, the understanding that those gave us in terms of who we really are, as opposed to the technologies that they supported, were pushed to the side. So the elephant in the room, or the elephant that was being tried to push out of the room, is our deeper nature, is the understanding of what is mind and consciousness. And just as in the early 20th century, that old mechanistic science was coming across anomalous discoveries that didn't fit into its framing. So the discoveries were accepted, but the philosophical implications were not. Now we're coming at the beginning, or the 2020s, where we have much more evidence, many more discoveries that are turning that worldview on its head. That instead of an essentially meaningless, purposeless, separate, material, mechanistic universe, is an emergent understanding of a living universe that meaningfully exists and purposefully evolves from simplicity to complexity as a unitive thought, as a unitive creation of a divine, infinite, eternal cosmos, where we are its microcosmic co-creators. We have meaning, we have purpose within a meaningful and purposeful and evolving universe. And that is such a beautiful revelation. And it's revelation of leading edge science at all scales of existence across many different fields of research. And crucially, vitally, it's converging with universal wisdom teachings, indigenous teachings. It's helping, it's more than helping us. It's empowering us to literally remember who we really are.
And indigenous teachings have been going on for tens of thousands of years. They point the way. Parts of science today point the way. Esther Hicks, Law of Attraction, her talks perhaps point the way. Seth, the 1970s, the New
Mhm.
Age, the light being, Jane Roberts. There's
Sure.
many different. There's some areas that you've really enjoyed over the last bunch of decades where you're just thankful that those signposts were there?
Well, they're still being revealed, and I've been at the bow wave of a lot of this revelatory. For me, the joy is that it's revealing that not just that we're inseparable from the whole world and that we have meaning and purpose, because that's my journey from the age of 4 years old. It's really revealing what I've experienced for nearly 70 years. But what the great joy for me is it's revealing that we all belong, and that we all, whether we've had those sort of experiences or not, are naturally able to.
Mm,
Our societies in many ways have shut us down. We've been told that this is nonsense. It's not nonsense.
mm,
It is foundational, and it is the most authentic perspective we have of the nature of reality and who we are. And what it does is, instead of exiling uh, attributes and phenomena, and such as synchronicities and our intuition, it brings them back into a lived experience and joy that we're able, because these are our natural attributes. Above all, it seems to me that it honors love. It brings love, because I describe our universe not just as a living, evolving, unitive entity, but a loving universe. And for me, love is at the most foundational level, is about relationship. And everything in our universe is in right relationship, from atoms to planets to the whole universe.
that was the next question, which is if is or if or how do you view the universe, and is love the fabric of the universe? What's a quick reaction to that?
Yes.
I
Is
love
that
it.
quick? Is that quick enough?
Absolutely. Um, can you talk to us about how you are viewing human beings right now in terms of their ability to sort of evolve in front of our very eyes? Just more consciousness in the moment, more awareness, more allowing, call it listening, call it basic seeing as well, and collectively, if people wish. How do you handle that topic?
Well, absolutely. This is perhaps the fundamental question of our time. Are we able to waken up? Are we to wake up and realize we're inseparable? To awake to not just understand, but experience and ultimately embody the reality of who we truly are, and to be able, therefore, to consciously evolve. I mean, we talk at the moment about the meta crisis. Yeah. Perhaps we can start to reframe it as a metamorphosis,
Hmm,
because in metamorphosis, as you well know, we all know, a caterpillar is pretty much, its job in life is to eat everything it can. But a time comes when its whole essence calls for it to go into a chrysalis state.
hmm,
And in that chrysalis state, that caterpillar essentially dissolves. And as it dissolves, the imaginal cells of the emergent butterfly begin to form. And as the old caterpillar is dissolving, its immune system actually is fighting those imaginal emergent cells of the butterfly. But what that does is it makes them stronger. So when the butterfly finally emerges from the chrysalis, it is the perfection of who it is and who it can be. So when we bring that analogy, instead of a meta crisis, not despite, but because of that crisis, we can actually go through this process of metamorphosis, not because we know that the butterfly awaits us. We don't. It's an emergent process. We could say the butterfly doesn't know who it's going to be through that process. It seems to me that as humanity, we don't know who we will be. What I would suggest is that in trusting a loving universe and answering its invitation to consciously evolve, we trust the benevolence of that invitation, and attune and align and open our hearts and all that we are to its promise and its potential.
And we're witnessing the usual hubbub that mankind does, but maybe a little more accentuated now. I'm sure when no matter what decade we picked, or 70s, it was accentuated then if we were in the 70s. But I'll give a few examples. The media, it seems to be sort of imploding. I was a publicist for a long time. It's not the same media from like 2015, 2016, and previous. It's a little more back and forth, topsy turvy. We'll leave it at that. But look at disclosure, the concept that life might exist outside of our own thinking, whether it's interdimensional, galaxies away, or non corporeal, energy based life. And I will add light forms, love and above. Um, and what else? There's a few other areas where you may be seeing just a sea change. Maybe
Mhm.
the thinkers have got to do it the thinking way. They'll get a little exhausted at some point, and even if it's a paper trail and it's official later by science, they might be behind a little bit for something else. What is the something else? It's consciousness through the heart. How do you describe that, Jude?
I think it is, but for me, it's also, Mike, absolutely heart-centered. And I would suggest and beyond, in the sense that, for most of our societies, certainly in the West, are very heady. We've almost imprisoned ourselves in our heads. And we're not going to get out of this meta crisis through the metamorphosis
Hmm.
by being in our heads, certainly in my perspective. And yet our minds are powerful. We are creative beings. But it also seems to me that we create not from just our heads, we create also from our hearts. We create also from our guts, from our purpose, from our sense of meaning. So for me, when I look back and I look at universal wisdom teachings, they tended to emphasize three paths to enlightenment, whatever we might call it. And those were questers. They weren't the general everybody. They were very specific and very few in number, but they led the way to deeper understanding. But more than that, deeper understanding, deeper experiencing, deeper embodying. So the three paths for me have been the way of the sage, the way of the mind. And that included the ancient Greek geometers. It included, the sense of being number and music and geometry being absolutely foundational to the appearance of reality. But many, many others. But the way of the mind, trying to understand. And in those days, it was sacred science. So it was not separate from a sense of spirituality or anything else. It was aimed to give an understanding, but also meaning and purpose within their awareness and within their cultures. So the way of the sage, the way of the shaman is the way of the heart. So when we look at indigenous wisdom teachings, they're all about the web of life. They're about right relationship. They're about reciprocity. They're about the me and the we and the all. And then there's the way of what I call the seer or the mystic, the way of the revelation, which is that deep sense of purpose. And that has come through, spirituality-based teachings and religions at their deeper level, not the dogmatic level or the organizational level, but the deeper level. So it seems to me that we're in a time now, and our technologies have enabled us to have utter access to all of these ways of the sage and the shaman and the seer. And in many ways, the indigenous teachings have invited us into that experiential exploration and discovery. And we're opening up, as you're teaching and as you're inviting us to, into these multidimensional realms of revelation. So for me, it's bringing it all together. So it's both head and heart and purpose. And one other key, absolutely vital, integration, because I talk about into greatness rather than inter, because it's more than the sum of its parts. We are more than the sum of our parts, is the integration of the masculine and the feminine and their attributes. What was called in long ago the sacred marriage, because from that, it seems to me that the sacred child of our potential, our conscious evolutionary potential, can be born in its fullness of creativity, in its fullness of joy, and its fullness of love.
Yeah, can we go on a tangent? It'll be ancient Egypt or some other place in the past where maybe those you'll know how to say this better, but the divine feminine, the masculine were more in balance. Can you talk to us just about how it was before a certain point from any point in time, maybe ancient Egypt or wherever you have an interest?
Let's take three examples, I would suggest. Let's go to ancient China first, because most folks, I would suspect, are very familiar with the yin yang symbol.
Mm.
Yeah, where the half that is the yin is the dark with the light of the yang coming out, and the light of the yang with the dark of the yin coming out. And they're in balance, because if we see the yin yang symbol, there's a wave that flows through them that essentially conjoins them. So the Tao, that is the tradition of the yin yang symbol, speaks that in the beginning is the one becomes two, the two becomes three, and from the three, 10,000 things are born. In other words, the wholeness of our universe differentiates itself. It remains whole, but it differentiates itself into the yin yang principles that, you know, for us are the sort of masculine, feminine aspects of who we are. But then the two of those differentiated, can integrate to the three. There's a resolution into the three, which is the child energy, which is why so many traditions talk about trinities. And then from the three, 10,000 things are born, because then the abundance and the complexity flows forward. So that's the ancient Chinese. The ancient Vedic tradition also reflected that perspective of wholeness, differentiating itself, to explore itself, to experience itself. It would be very boring indeed if that didn't happen. We'd all be grey gloop. And the Egyptian tradition too, because the Egyptian tradition has what is often translated as gods and goddesses, but it's really netra, and they are principles of cosmic consciousness. So again, what you get in the Egyptian pantheon, you get the masculine, the feminine, the child. So you get Osiris, Isis, and Horus. Yeah, you get Set, Nephthys, and Anubis. So again, you're getting this differentiation of the wholeness into the masculine, feminine aspects, and then the child and onwards. And within us, going back to India, when we look at chakras and we look at meridians, there is the sort of tradition that working up through our body, we have a sort of caduceus, which is why the caduceus is the caduceus of two serpents around a central staff, is the masculine and feminine, Ida and Pingala, around the central child, as it were, of the Sushumna. And they come together at each of the chakra points. So these traditions reflect so much of each other.
Elegantly stated, as you've been doing the whole show. So thank you for this. I love the child approach, like all under heaven or innocence is the way to realize non-duality. It's absolutely, for me, the simplest way. It'll look like I'm completely vapid if I said it correctly, vacuous, but not knowing much helps. With that, the next question for the Egyptians, ancient Egypt, we're in the press a lot. You've got a lot of, you know, pushing for disclosure. It's about material, tech, this and that. It's like watching a sports match of some sort, blow by blow, or fantasy football, if I can be very American for a second. It really is. And then outside the stadium of whatever's happening on the field, we could do it two ways. Very few people are going to venture outside the stadium and go broader, or want to get down onto the field and meet the players. And so it's a little interesting, but eventually enough other people outside of the realm of science or the people pushing for FOIA requests will simply be doing communication in a broader way, more instantaneous, maybe beyond language. Can you talk to us just a little bit about the stars, other beings, stuff like that? I'll throw it out there in a very kind of sci-fi way, but do Pleiadians exist? Andromedans, Sirius, I don't know how to say Syrians, Sirius, people from Sirius, Orion, same thing, I don't know how to say that either, or Arcturians and so on. Where does Dr. Jude Currivan fall on that right now? And is there a public sort of statement that you say to stay in line with the show, but personally you're like, no, I've had a lot of experience.
Well, of course, you could be Pleiadians from Pleiades.
Thank you.
I'd rather be Pleiadians than Sirians. Anyway, we can go down that route and more dad
Yeah.
jokes. More dad jokes. Um, for me, I've experienced multidimensional realms since a child, and those realms have also included what might be described as extraterrestrial entities, both interdimensional and in the physical. So yes, I am familiar with many of the beings that you've described. So the fact that I'm sharing this with you says, yes, I do believe they exist.
Awesome.
When I went to Oxford University back in the day to study physics, and I'd had by then 18 years of, or 14 years, I was 18 when I went to Oxford. I'd had 14 years of these explorations. And yet the science that I was being taught then, even though that it was the leading edge in terms of quantum physics and relativity and all the rest of it, first of all, had no notion of or perception of what I've been describing in terms of this emergent cosmology of a living, unitive universe and multidimensionality, but also specializing in cosmology in my third year in quantum physics and cosmology. You know, as far as I was aware, I was the only person in 200 students who actually felt, believed, understood, accepted that there were extraterrestrial life forms. Now, I would say that the vast majority of there's a whole discipline called astrobiology that is working on the principle that there are biological organisms. I don't think they've quite got to the multidimensionality yet, but biological organisms.
Bacteria.
Well, and beyond that, because
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I wrote about in my latest book, The Story of Gaia, is that by 5.5 billion years ago, and perhaps before that, but we know that regarding to our planetary system, even before it came into being 5.5 billion years ago, all of the building blocks for biological life were already present in interstellar clouds of molecular hydrogen. And those molecular clouds, oh, bless you, thank you.
Available on Amazon. Absolutely check it out, folks.
But the point is that the really important point is that we have photographs now from the James Webb Telescope, really precise, beautiful photographs of such interstellar clouds of molecular hydrogen, ice, and prebiotic complex molecules. So the building blocks of DNA, RNA, amino acids, lipids, sugars, all the stuff that makes us up were already there in tiny molecular factories in interstellar space before our planetary system even came into being. But they couldn't go to the next level of complexity because that needed planets. And that needed planets that were not too hot, not too cold, and had water. So around that time, a supernova star, a big star at the end of its life, exploded. And in that explosion created shockwaves. And those shockwaves collapsed a nearby part of an interstellar dust cloud into what became our planetary system. But it didn't collapse in chaos. Those shockwaves were so perfect, and that star was so at the right time. If it was closer in, it would have been in the kill zone. We wouldn't be here. If it was further away, the shockwaves wouldn't have been frequent enough nor strong enough. They were perfect to literally shake that interstellar cloud into a gravitational collapse. But it didn't collapse in chaos. It collapsed in the form of a central protostar that became our sun, and what's called a protoplanetary disk around it, or a proplid, that had resonant orbits within it, like musical notes. And those resonant orbits clustered the material into planetoids. And they grew and they grew and they formed the planetary system we have today. But Gaia, our planetary home, was a water planet because there was so much ice in those interstellar clouds. That water was both part of the original planetoid that became Gaia, but also was delivered by asteroids and comets, along with all of those prebiotic molecules just ready as a birthing gift to our planetary home to then be able to continue that process of evolution. Now, it wasn't just Gaia. We're in the absolute perfect position of the habitable zone or Goldilocks zone, not too far from our sun, warm enough, not too hot, not too cold. But we think Mars also was a water planet with an atmosphere and was able to start biological life, but not far enough. Venus, closer to the sun, also we think now was probably a water planet. Again, too hot, too close to the sun. But we also know that beneath the ice crusts of some of the moons of Jupiter and Saturn are likely liquid oceans that may too harbor life. Again, it may be simple, it may be more complex. Even Pluto, the latest understanding we have, the latest evidence we have, is beneath that crust, that heart-shaped surface feature on Pluto, there may be liquid water. Now, we also know that there are more planets in our galaxy than stars. We're seeing more and more exosystems, as they're known, and more Earth-like planets, as well as other types of planets. And we're also starting now, we're very close because we picked up spectroscopically all of these biological forerunners in interstellar clouds. We're getting very close to picking up the signatures of biological organisms in other solar systems. So I would say any person working in this field who doesn't think there's going to be an abundance of biological life forms, and as likely as complex as we are, or even more complex, I suspect you'll find people wouldn't be in this field if they didn't. And I'm not an exobiologist, but there are many men and young people are absolutely thrilled and impassioned about this, this sense of discovery. And I would be very surprised if we are not openly aware as a species of extraterrestrial contact in the next few years. I think it's very close. I think it's going to come. And there's a lot of people who don't want it to come, but I think there's so much impulse and impetus. I think disclosure is very close.
I'm going to point to like 7 pieces on a chessboard, or maybe they're just checkers on a checkers board. It doesn't matter. Awareness, thinking, the hardliners in science, we call it materialism or whatever it's called, where, hey, it can exist, it doesn't exist unless science has already proven it. So even if the president of the United States read a statement and said, yes, aliens have existed for 75 years or much longer, it's this, but it's just a presidential speech. And it's a shockwave culturally. But there are still some scientists that'll be like, nope, hasn't been proven in a lab, doesn't exist. And I'm not trying to push that too much.
No, absolutely.
Thinking it's fair. Yes. And I still had a couple. Oh, so if I've been doing what I've been doing only 13 years, helping people see angels, but angels recently, 5 weeks ago, it never stops. Your expansion, your growth. So there's always something extra. And so the second you get comfortable, you're like, whoa, I need a cushion for this chair now. One angel named Charlotte said she's got an Orion background. Another angel named Dale, who coached a famous Olympic athlete from the 70s, 80s that we would know, a lot of golds, said he's got an Andromeda background. So did another angel, and then Pleiades, and then I'm skipping something else. So yes, it's not a shock. Oh, so she's got a Sirius background, not trying to be too serious here. My guardian angel, but another Dr. MD, that's her guardian angel as well. And I think there's probably 80,000 of us that share the same guardian angel or something. So it's a pretty big galactic crew out there potentially. And if people are group seeing, group feeling, and I'll throw one more chess piece on the table. If everyone started seeing light the way Joseph Campbell described it with Bill Moyers in the audio version of Power of Myth, something like that. He said, I think consciousness is energy, or I forget what it was. Consciousness is love. The bottom line, it was everywhere, and it's more alive than we think. That might shift things without interfering. And this is the final chess piece, free will, setting your intent, maybe paying attention a little more. How do we slow our roll with thinking? In the blue ball light, Charlotte said 7% less thinking daily. Is it? That's the Olympic gold medal for all of us. It's not realistic for humans that thinking's going to go away. Can you handle that morass of chess pieces, checker pieces? Just
Well,
talk to us about free will. What's ahead for us in one sense? You've been doing this a very long time. You have to be a little more enthusiastic. Was the 70s pretty close, or just the 70s? It's always been kind of close, not really.
in the 70s, I think astrologically, I think that the early 60s actually were almost one of the first waves of this. And like any tide, when it starts to turn, waves go up and then they ebb back, and then more waves come and then they ebb back. But the direction of travel is up the beach, yeah, if the tide's coming in. And that's how I would describe this last period of time, you know, and going back a lot longer actually, but certainly over the last sort of 50 or so years. And I think the other thing is that when you talk about scientists and discoveries in a lab, you can't limit yourself as a scientist to just lab work, because most discoveries take place way out of labs. And the point I would make there, just one specific, is that back in the day, back in the early times of the quantum physicists, it was realized very early on that for quantum physics to work at all, our entire universe had to be unitive. In other words, it had to be non-locally unitive. Yeah. There could not be any separation within it. Within space-time, yes, the speed limit of light is the cosmic speed cop. And it's a both and. Both within space-time, there is a signaling finite limit. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the arrow of time, we wouldn't have causality, we wouldn't be here. And by the universe also existing and evolving as a unitive entity, it has to know itself in its entirety every moment throughout its whole life cycle. Now, originally, the lab experiments were showing that this was only taking place at quantum scales, tiny, tiny, tiny. By the 80s, the labs were sort of being able to show that non-locality much larger scale, beyond the scale of quantum, which is subatomic. They were showing it at levels of molecules. But in 2018, a group of folks led by a team at MIT were able to unitively, non-locally connect. In other words, no signal goes between because they're just part of the wholeness. Photons of light in the laboratory with starlight from 600 light years away, from light from what's called a quasar, which is a very active galactic center, 12.2 billion light years away. So that's at cosmological scales. Now, that was so important, but the decades of research going up to that point and beyond were so key that in 2022, the Nobel Prize for Physics was given to 3 researchers who'd been exploring universal non-locality, the unitive nature of the universe for decades. And the Nobel Prize for Physics, Mike, is only given for settled science. So there is no scientist worth the name at this point who would not agree that our universe exists and evolves as a unitive entity. The other thing is that from the study of black holes, we've realized that the appearance of our universe, energy, matter, space, time, isn't its fundamental nature, that its appearance emerges from deeper levels of causation as meaningful information. And it does so, and it manifests itself holographically. Now, that is key, because the holographic model of cosmology is now the mainstream model of cosmology. So that means that any cosmologist who actually is following this direction of travel, and many, in fact, almost all are, I would say now, understands that the nature of reality is such that the appearance of our universe, its ostensibly material appearance, arises from deeper non-material realms of causation, meaningfully, purposefully. Now that is a sea change of major import. And many other fields of research are going down the same route. And so I'm being invited to all sorts of gigs, not just scientific gigs, but on every which way, from economics and education to governance to United Nations, all of it, because this, I would suggest, is an idea whose time has come. And even more importantly, it's the time whose idea has come.
Do you think, stepping beyond science for a second, do you think mankind has, in some quadrant, some corner of the globe, discovered some form of unlimited energy drawing from, we'll call it the other side or the invisible side of the universe? I don't have the right lingo to ask the rest of this question, but do you think it's possible there's wow technology that the mainstream folks out there, most of us would not know anything about right now, but maybe it could be on the horizon in the next 50 years? Could you, or let's throw out another one lately that's been popping up, is just the concept of warp drive. Could you, has that fascinated you, just as a side topic here and there? You certainly don't mind Googling or checking things out to just see what you
Absolutely.
read?
Yeah, sure. I think two things here is really important. Everything that I've understood for since I started, doing all of this when I was so small, suggests that our universe of space-time, its energy matter, is conserved. In other words, it changes its form, but it can't be destroyed or created. So within space-time, it's like fundamental. Otherwise, our universe just wouldn't work. We wouldn't be here having this conversation. So in that regard, I'm sure there are, of course, going to be technologies that go way beyond what we understand now. But in my heart, as well as my mind, unless the evidence is there, in which case I will follow the evidence wherever it leads, there will be no technologies that violate those basic principles of the arrow of time within space-time. I'm very clear on that, and thus causality within space-time, that will go faster than the speed of light within space-time, and will take energy from something that is beyond space-time. Okay, now that still allows us to delve into what dark matter is, and we think dark energy is a tension in the universe. The problem you've got with the tension of the universe, and some of the folks out there doing this sort of doing that sort of work, is that quantum physics postulates an energy of the so-called vacuum of space, zero-point energy, that is vastly, vastly, vastly more. I mean, I'm not just talking about trillions, I'm talking about trillions of trillions of trillions of trillions of, 7, 8, 9 trillions of trillions times greater than what we've measured. So there's something I would suggest that is in error in that quantum field theory framing that doesn't then correlate with what we're actually measuring. And I've got an understanding of what that might be, but it's too sciencey, it's too rabbit hole sciencey for us to discuss. But when you talk about warp drive, one of the things in terms of the extraterrestrial technologies that I have a sense may well be possible is what I call space hop.
Mm-hmm.
So by actually hopping, beyond space-time, but then hopping back. So you're not violating time. You're coming into a different space point, but within the universal time flow. Because one of the great things that Einstein understood is, although time's relative to an observer, space is relative to an observer, that wasn't his genius. It was brilliant. But his genius was realizing that to understand the universe, he needed to conjoin those as space-time. And it's only then, when you get a universal notion of space-time, that you can understand time itself. So all of this does not violate anything within space-time, but it's technologies that take advantage to a deeper level than we currently have of this understanding that's now emerging to a great degree. Do you want me to go back to free will?
Yes, please. That'd be great.
Well, in an old paradigm of a block universe, which I don't think we need to go back into, it does sort of strip away free will. But, this understanding of ourselves as spiritual beings having a physical experience, as being microcosmic co-creators of our universe, brings free will back. It doesn't bring it back in the old notion, because our physical bodies and our awareness lags. Our awareness does lag behind our direct connection with whatever we want to call it, our soul level, our higher self, our spiritual aspect of our individuated awareness. But that doesn't mean that we don't have free will. And the more in my life that I've surrendered that little me to that spiritual me, then I have sort of less egoic free will. But I actually feel far more in attunement and alignment with the evolutionary impulse and meaning and purpose of our universe. So what comes through me, I can then serve the well-being, the whole being, and the good of the whole.
Can you talk about how each person already has everything they need within? They might not know it. My situation is, my problem is a bit of thinking. Welcome to being human. Can you talk to us about how all the tools in the toolkit are there? How every religion, almost every religion culture points to this in one fashion or another, you know, ancient India texts and so on. Can you remind us about how it's like the classic treasure map with an X on the map, except instead of an outside treasure, you get to discover that you're the treasure here. Can you talk to us about that?
Well, you've already said it, Mike. I mean, pretty much all the ancient traditions told us that. So why aren't we embodying that? And it seems to me that part of a possible reason for that is that I'm a gal who sort of perceives that, you know, every step has a purpose, has a meaning, whether we know it or not. So as a species, we've come a long way. And over the last period of time, maybe 2,500, 3,000 years or so, we've moved more into an individuated sense of self rather than community or you know, all of that. But as we've gone down that journey of individuation, we've also gone through a perception, especially latterly, last few hundred years, of this perception of separation. And as a result, we've sort of misled, not misled. We've peripheralized that larger sense of who we are, and that sense of the me and the we and the whole and the all. So it seems to me that we're at a point where we were talking earlier about a meta crisis and a metamorphosis and a waking up to remember we're inseparable. So it seems to me that now we're able to, as we do wake up, and as more and more folks do wake up, to appreciate that we're inseparable, that we can actually link up and lift up together and bring together this sense of me and we and all. So what I would say is that it's choice for all of us. But I don't know what really got you on this understanding of path. I'd love to know this. But for many folks, it's some sort of crisis in their own life, a crisis of identity, a health crisis, whatever it may be. And it's almost as though the universe, for each and every one of us, comes a point in our lives that the universe taps us on the shoulder and says, maybe it's time to wake up now. And we go, no, I'm having too much fun. I'm doing whatever. And so an opportunity again comes again, and it's a stronger touch on our shoulder. And if we don't hear and listen to that, we get the 2x4 often, a smack in the face, a loss of whatever. And that then somehow, and I don't think we need to do this, but I think for a lot of people, it is that point of bottoming out in whatever part of their journey they're in, where they cannot go on as they have been going on. I wish that wasn't the case. And I think more and more for the younger people and the children, I hope they do not need to go through that, that we are good enough elders and communities that we can help them to realize how incredibly powerful and wonderful they are. And also to realize that they do have, exactly as you say, all that they need within them, that they can trust themselves, they can trust their intuition, they can trust their creativity, they can trust their uniqueness, they can trust that they belong, that it's not just about unity of diversity, and in that diversity you may not have a home, but unity and belonging. And that's for me, and it's a message of love.
Beautiful. We've got an American idiom, if I can remember it correctly. I mean, there's only 4 million of them, and that's every other sentence for me. This isn't your first rodeo. So Whether it's through dream time, direct chatting like Einstein perhaps did. Joseph Campbell didn't get to meet his angels according to angels, but he got an A+ for following his unique life path. And boy, did he kick butt, I think, in generating interest in so much
Yeah.
richness of, we'll call, human heritage all over the globe. For you, it's past lives. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Okay. Would you say you've got some definition here and there, whether it's through dream time, direct conversations, direct remembering? I think there's a Matthias Di Stefano, I can't say his name correctly, who lives and breathes that, has gotten asked a lot of questions. Also, from way out, from before, let's say the 20 to 2000 to 4000 lives here, we'll do it this way. You can even have overlapping past lives, like a hand, your arm is the soul, splinters of light into overlapping past lives for extra contrast and experience. How would you handle the topic of past lives, your richness, your experience? And is there a time you would, not today, but is there a time down the road, let's say disclosure happened, it's like the Star Wars Cantina in the 1977 movie. There's a lot of figures out there, a lot of unconditional love, free energy, any answer to any question if you just would ask from a place of love and just be willing to listen. So that's in another sense, not free energy, but free knowledge, just openness, opening openness. At that point, would you perhaps have an interesting story to share? Or is it, how would you slice and dice this whole past lives thing? I mean, it's a lot of detail. We don't need details when it's love. You're here, just be in the moment. That's enough. How does Jude Currivan like to handle that entire enchilada as I just laid one out?
Well, I've written a lot about the whole enchilada. I mean, I've written 7 books, and before the Cosmic Hologram and then the story of Gaia, my earlier books. I mean, my first was The Wave, and that was like a sort of 101 to all of this, but it truly was a sort of 101 basic introduction to a co-creator's guide to the whole world, as it were. And then I wrote a couple of books that involved my own journeys of inner and outer discovery. One was called The Eighth Chakra, which is very much about us opening beyond our egoic sense of self now, and the opportunity to progressively not just understand but experience and embody what I call unitive awareness, which is all of this multidimensionality and wholeness. But also a book called The 13th Step, because I was guided back in 1998 to undertake a series of pilgrimages around our planetary home, Gaia. And that was a profound journey of inner and outer discovery for these times. And then I wrote another book with Irving Laszlo called Cosmos, which again was more the sort of societal implications of some of these, this understanding, and a book called Hope, Healing Our People and Earth, which again was this sort of realizing in service as a healer, that we embody the same patterns in the we and the me and the we and the all space, and therefore how we might be able to help heal and release those, understand and heal and release those, to be able to consciously evolve. And then Cosmic Hologram and the story of Gaia, and lots and lots and lots of other things along the way. So for me, it's been and is an ongoing journey of self-discovery, discovery about the deeper nature of reality, the gratitude that there is such an incredible abundance of wisdom and guidance available to us, and hopefully to show up and get out of the way.
Are you your unique life purpose on this unique life path? Is it to help raise awareness through your enthusiasm for all things science, spiritual, just humanity? Can you put it into your own words, Jude, of just what you're here to do, what you've been doing, and I'd say quite successfully, because you're smiling an awful lot. You've been having, I'd say, a lot of success connecting with folks and swimming the currents. How about that?
I love that, Mike. I love that. It was funny when I got to the completion of the 13 journeys that became a book, and I had no intention of writing a book. I've no intention of being an author. I have a very long very long scenic route of international business and lots of other things beforehand. But what I came to a perspective of when I completed those 13 journeys, which overall were really from the initial guidance in 1998 through to the completion in 2007 was a large sort of commitment and dedication of my life. I came to a perspective that I don't have a purpose. I am a purpose, that everything in existence is innately meaningful and innately purposeful. So I've had so many people coming to me, as I'm sure they do to you, and say, I don't know my purpose. What is my purpose? What is my purpose? And what I invite them to do is relax and realize that just by being here and now, just by being who they are innately purposeful. And one of the things that I invite them to do in that sense is I talk about the big breath of our universe. That it began very small, yes, but it began in an incredibly fine-tuned and ordered and purposeful way, not as a big bang, but as the first moment of an ongoing big breath. So what I invite folks to do is close their eyes and sense that the big breath of our universe is breathing through them. The love of the big breath of our universe, its vastness, is breathing intimately through us. And as it does so, feel that love within us. And then as we breathe out, to breathe that love into the world. If we do nothing
I pulled
other
up
than that.
I pulled a quote up earlier while you were talking, so forgive me for ever looking away, but I can barely handle the role of show host. This is a quote from 2014. Now, he passed, I think, in 1987-ish or so. And of course, I was like, Chogyam Trungpa is a mouthful for Americans. What's another name? He said, call me Gentle Frank. So I have been kicking over the milk bottles since day one on this path. But I love that quote. It reminded me of what you were just saying. And also another quote, because in a way, I feel like you're describing compassion. What's within all of man.
But I'm not just describing it. I'm inviting folks to feel it for themselves.
Yeah, what swirling energy through all of us that connects us to all there is. But one more quote from an angel named Dale. I think I mentioned him before. A definition of compassion. I think there's a trillion definitions of compassion, and it's what you said. Just being here, you're living it. Compassion is just being and trusting the outcome to be of the highest intent for all. And that immediately like jumped off the page. I was reaching for it when you were talking just a moment ago. With that, can you share one experience direct that you're going to find on a lot of these shows? There are some classic examples, but there may be one that was super special for you that you always look back on favorably. You just draw a reminder. If the scientific conference was mean, you go right back to that memory. I have a feeling it's like water to a duck. You just shake and it's gone and you move on to the next thing. But do you have a couple memories or a memory you can share that was something that you still have no way to explain it, or you do, but you wouldn't want to share that here? What happened that was beyond the ordinary series of events?
You really are asking the wrong person.
Has it always been one thing after another to begin with?
Pretty much. I mean, one of the perhaps to share is that when I was doing my PhD in archaeology, one of the things I was doing was what's called field walking. And my PhD in archaeology was about ancient cosmologies. It was about, how we see ourselves and particularly the transition and transformation from the hunter-gatherer era of the Mesolithic or Middle Stone Age to the pastoralists and farmers of the Neolithic or New Stone Age. And going from perceiving perhaps shamanically the world to perceiving the world in a more sage-like way and building monuments accordingly. And I was walking on a beautiful morning. I mentioned, I think before we came on air, that I lived a gorgeous sacred landscape called Avebury in England. And out of clear blue sky came these words: in the commonality of our humanity, we're all ordinary. In the commonality of our divinity, we're all extraordinary. So for me, it's finding the ordinary in the extraordinary and the extraordinary in the ordinary and dancing those and realizing that they're all parts of the wholeness of who we really are and the wholeness of our being and our potential to evolve and explore further this wonderful universe and say yes to its invitation to do so.
little Lawrence of Arabia in there in a way. Who are you and the extraordinary his background in the movie. I love movies. Okay,
I
last.
tell you what, before we finish, I tell you what, have you ever been to Wadi Rum? Okay, Wadi Rum is in Jordan, and it was where Lawrence was, and I took a group there to once, and we stayed in the desert, and one of my beautiful memories is getting up very early and walking for about 4 or 5 hours in the desert,
Mm.
in Wadi Rum, where Lawrence would have been, and I've also been to his home in England.
Oh, interesting. Okay, this is the last question for the show officially, but you can end with something sweeping because you're really good at it, and it'll be good for the interview and the show for years and decades to come. Which reminds me, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. And Judah said something that you've obviously related to during this entire time. Why not put it down or at least say good show, 2 words, in the comments? It helps others discover the show and discover Jude. You have had conversations or gotten advice or had a voice come out of the ether, and there has been an identity behind it at least once. Can you share with us one of your favorite unconditional love figures that has been periodically assisting you? And can you give us a little detail as if we're at the soap opera blow by blow level, back to that sport announcer's box? And this is unfortunately not important in any way, but it's definitely great flavor and great fun and a great way to wrap up a show called Angels, Positivity, and Love. And just to check the positivity box, I'll argue positivity is abundance. There, box is checked. You can comment on that if you wish as well. Who's one of your favorite figures that's been there, touching your shoulder, getting healing, you've chatted with, you've seen in dream time, lucid dreams, or beyond that, more waking than our current reality, the other part of this? Who would you like to share if you could?
There are so many, and this is continuing, which is so wonderful. But the first being I was aware of when I was 4 years old that came to me was Thoth, the ancient Egyptian wisdom keeper. So Thoth came to me very young and is still close by and with me. The other being that came very early on was Athena.
Hmm.
So Athena's been with me, and I'm incredibly grateful to both of them. And others include the ascended masters and the archangels and many divas and elemental beings and planetary beings. So I write about this quite a lot, and I'm more than happy to be open about it. But I'd rather invite other people to be open to those conversations and that guidance and that wonderful adventure for themselves. And it may not be, someone well known or whatever. It may be a name that just comes into your head, and just be open to that,
Hmm.
and be open to a potential beginning of a great adventure.
Hmm. Well, I'll end this with a Winnie the Pooh quote at this end. Still would love to have you share one more thing. Because I think Winnie the Pooh, my speed, um, everyone talks to animals, no one listens. That's the problem. That's the Winnie the Pooh quote. I'll add, though, that that's also everyone's opportunity for growth and expansion. We're all a little bit like the kid just out of university or uni in the basement who hasn't taken the first real job yet. What tremendous room for growth, possibility, expansion on the career front. And in a way, that's kind of mankind right now, and science and everything else. You would not believe how quickly it'll all go the more we let go and allow, with a capital A. With that, Jude, one last thing, if you could just sweep us off our feet as you've been doing the whole show. Can you remind us about, again, love, compassion, possibility, creativity, how it's all there and it's big, kind of like a harp, but you get to be the, now I'm going to lose my words here, harpsichordist. Can you hit some strings for us and strum and leave us with a very uplifting reminder? One more, if it's okay, and then we're completely wrapping the show.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I think it's so simple.
Hmm.
We're really good at making things complicated. And our universe, as Einstein said, is as simple as it can be, but no simpler. And
Hmm.
I add, to fulfill its evolutionary purpose. And for me, its evolutionary purpose is to bring the wholeness of its love, the
Hmm.
wholeness of its benevolence into individuated microcosms of its wholeness, such as us. So for me, this is a reminder, but it's far more a rehearter that we are at our most foundational love, because how could we not be when we're inseparable from a universe of love?
Mm.
So let's choose love. Let's choose love. And I never say it's easy, but it's what will bring us home. It's what will nurture us and guide us and welcome us into the homecoming of who we really are.
There's that Beatles song, I am you, you are me, we are all together. And then also complexity, or this down here, simplicity, always the opportunity or the occasion in every moment. Dr. Jude Currivan, you are a refreshing breath of, I guess, fresh air. Let's be redundant. And I'm sure on the world scene, you've been making waves this entire time, splashes. Can you share with us one last thing people can look forward to in 2025, late 2024, beyond? Do you have another book? You don't have to tell us what it is. Always working on another book now, even though you weren't planning on being an author?
Always working on another book, absolutely. But yes and no. I feel as an author, you become pregnant with the possibility of a book, and I'm feeling slightly that, but that isn't what I'm focusing on at the moment. One of the things I'm focusing on is I'm co-producing a film called A Radical Guide to Reality, and it's only 14 minutes, and it will be provided free to everyone on YouTube in September. And it's also going to be provided free to young people of 13, 14-year-olds and their educators with an educational wraparound, so that we can share this story and they can see it. The film itself, I think, will be really wonderful. And we're subtitling it in something like 14 languages. So it's a free gift to the world, but it's telling this new story, and it's inviting everyone, whatever age, people are, into this new adventure. So we'll be posting details of it on our website, which is wholeworld-view.org. We'll be sharing it through our networks as widely as possible. And Mike, I'd love to send you, let you know so that you can share it with your community. So that's what's in the works at the moment. There's a whole lot of other things, but they're not for sort of, they're below the radar, as it were. We're trying to link up and lift up with so many folks from this unitive perspective so that we can serve transformational change in the world, whether it's economics, education, government, peace, security, everything. And of course, healing too. So that's what I'm serving at the moment.
Brilliant, Jude. Great to have you on Angels, Positivity, and Love. Anytime in 2025 you want to come back, you're just going to let me know. We're going to have you straight on. Thank you very much. This has been Angels, Positivity, and Love. Jude, you're amazing.
Thank you, Mike. Back at you. Except for the dad jokes. Sorry, except for the dad jokes.
We didn't share those on air, so
No, but I can tell everybody.
thank you again.
Thank you.